Everybody has that one classic RPG from their childhood they just love to bits. For a lot of people my age, it's something in the SNES or PS1 era like Chrono Trigger, Super Mario RPG, or one of the various Final Fantasy games. Just throw a dart at the wall, you'll find a fan base for one of them. But for me, it was a little ditty on the Game Boy Advance called Golden Sun. It was the type of game that wouldn't be considered anything particularly special nowadays, but for me it was always one of my favorite RPGs growing up, and I always look back on it with fond memories. I look back on the commercials for it with confusion because they didn't make much sense. Yeah, I'm sorry, I know I've brought this up like 2 or 3 times, but you really don't understand how weird commercials back then were. Of course, just like anything else you play when you're younger, you don't really know if it's good or bad until you play it again as an adult, so I decided to give Golden Sun another go. Just a heads up, I'm not going to really stray away from spoilers that much. I'll stay away from the major ones, but otherwise this game is like 16 years old, so deal with it. Anyway, this is one of my favorite RPGs, Golden Sun. Golden Sun is a 2001 video game for the Game Boy Advance, a game that was developed by Camelot Software Planning and published by Nintendo. If you've never heard of Camelot before, you might have heard of some of the other famous titles like the Shining Force series and what is probably their most successful games, the Mario Golf and Tennis games. No, really, these guys specialize in creating epic RPGs and golf. Golden Sun takes place in the fictional world of Weird, a realm that is home to various groups of humans who have the power to control the 4 major elements of earth, fire, wind, and water with their minds, using a power called Psynergy. As in, psychic energy. Get it? These people are called Adepts, and our story begins following one Adept in particular, a boy named Isaac. Or really, he's whatever you want to call him, since you get to name him. Like if you want to, you can name Clarence. No, wait, you can't name Clarence, it doesn't fit. Alright, Isaac it is. Isaac awakes one night to find a horrible storm and a renegade boulder are threatening to destroy his village. Isaac runs into his friend Garrett while fleeing for safety, and the two tutorialize their way through the town's plaza. However, along the way, they discover their childhood friend Felix is at risk of drowning in a river, so they go for help. It all turns out to be for naught though, as the boulder falls anyway before they can save Felix, at which point it seems that Felix and his parents, along with Isaac's father, are all killed, leaving Felix's sister Jenna the lone survivor. Isaac and Garrett run for help, but then the two are knocked out by a couple of glam rockers. Then the main story begins. 3 years after the incident that took his and Jenna's parents away, Isaac has dedicated himself to studying Psynergy and growing stronger. He teams up with his friends and their elderly teacher Creighton to go and study the sacred soul sanctum located above their village and end up stumbling upon something even greater than they once hoped for. One thing leads to another, and Jenna and Creighton get kidnapped by those 2 jerks that kicked you around the prologue, before then making off with some plot coupons that'll let them unleash an ancient power called alchemy onto the world. Isaac and Garrett set out to stop the bad guys, get the friends back, and stop the return of alchemy. Along the way, they'll meet various allied enemies, like a kid that can read people's minds and control the wind, a healer girl with blue hair, and an evil Deku tree that's trying to murder an entire village by turning them into withering trees. It's that kind of game. Golden Sun is what you would call a classic style RPG. Gameplay wise, it runs on a ton of tropes that other older RPGs are known for. Things like the world being made up of various small towns and dungeons connected together through an overworld map, turn-based combat, random encounters with monsters everywhere. Mechanically, it's an easy to understand game. During combat, you can control up to 4 party members who can perform various actions like casting spells, using items, defending and attacking, all while the enemy patiently waits for you to finish so they can follow up by smacking you in the face. Every party member has access to a pool of spells called Psynergy, which come in various flavors like damage dealing, stat boosting, healing, and status ailments. Everybody has a specialty or archetype they fall into, like how Garrett's your slow yet sturdy bruiser character, and Mia's your magical healing girl, and Isaac's the jack of all stats, and then there's Ivan, who dies to every single stray wind. Ironic, considering he's the wind adept. Something interesting about that role system though is that Golden Sun doesn't really require you to keep people in these positions. One of the other major gameplay mechanics in Golden Sun deals with these cute little elemental critters called Jinn. There's 4 types of Jinn, each one representing a different element. But all of them representing being totally adorable. I swear, whoever starts making good Jinn plushies is getting all my money. Jin can be set to an individual character to change their stats. All your party members have a base class they start with, but that class can be changed depending on what Jin you give them. If you decide to keep everyone with their respective Jin elements, then they'll proceed along with their initially given role by getting more powerful synergy from that particular area of expertise, as well as the appropriate stats to go along with it. If you mix and match Jin of different elements to a character though, you can end up with wildly different classes with a whole slew of different stats and synergy. Want to turn Isaac into a ninja and have Ivan be a white magician girl? Make it happen. In addition to their stat changing abilities, Jin can also be used in actual combat to unleash special attacks and abilities as if you're using a spell, only in this case it doesn't cost you any of your synergy points to set it off. But the absolute coolest thing about the Jin is that after you unleash them in combat, you can put them towards using a powerful summon that summons a creature of myth and legend. Like unleashing the power of Thor, the Thunder God, the Angel of Judgment who blows up the whole freaking world, a meteor that lets you do your best Sephiroth impression as you wipe out the dinosaurs, and the ultimate summon of Ice and Water, a giant ice shaver. Wait, what? Really? That's the ultimate water summon in this game? A snow cone machine? What is this thing even supposed to be? Boreas? As in the Greek god of the North Wind? What kind of artistic liberty makes you decide to turn the god of the North Wind into a gas station appliance? I'm never gonna get you, Japan. Although using Jin for attacks and summons can be useful for dishing out high damage without using a mana cost, there is still a price. When you use a Jin, you're effectively removing its stat boosting and class changing abilities that's attached to the character, while it sits on standby waiting to be used in a summon. And then after the summon, it has to take a turn or two to recover before you can use it again. The whole time this is going on though, the character that used the Jin is going to be gimped for stats and might not even have access to certain synergy in their arsenal. This makes using the Jin in battle as something of a high risk, high reward situation. Outside of the combat, Golden Sun also sticks to its typical old school RPG tropes when it comes to the dungeon crawling, namely that you have to wander around in several caves and forests for a few hours while solving puzzles and trying to find an exit, and then fighting some giant gorilla that came out of freaking nowhere, or a manticore that's just standing directly in front of the exit. You can't get by without a boss fight, but otherwise is just kinda hanging out there and wants to leave you alone. You know, it makes you realize that maybe in a different life the two of you could have been friends. Maybe even lovers. The gimmick that helps set Golden Sun apart in his dungeon crawling though is the use of synergy. You see, outside of summoning town flattening tornadoes or splitting the frickin' earth open and letting the might of hell engulf your enemies, synergy has some more mundane uses, such as using it to gently push rocks and statues around. Yeah, I know, gameplay balance or whatever, but you can't tell me that's not amusing that we have these godlike powers in combat, and yet I still have to use catch to steal a key to a locked door because Garrett can't just burn it down. Field synergy, as we're going to call it, are the abilities the game gives you to solve puzzles and helps you advance through dungeons and the plot. Most of it's pretty basic, like using synergy to push things around, grab things out of trees, or freeze puddles of waters to form platforms you can jump across. The field synergy wasn't anything spectacularly visually, but I thought it was pretty interesting and a fun game mechanic that added an extra layer of puzzle solving to the game. It wasn't just something that was restricted to dungeons either. You'd use these abilities in towns to track down new Jin items or finding ways to advance the plot when the game locked a door on you. I think my favorite and easily most used synergy though was an ability that Ivan had called Mind Read, which does exactly what you think it would. Mind Read lets you see an NPC's inner thoughts so that in addition to whatever dialogue they'll say to you when you talk to them at first, you also get to see what they really think of you afterwards. It's a cool ability that pretty much doubles the value of every single NPC in the game since you're pretty much grilling them for info twice. It even has story use, considering there's several times in the story where you might have to solve a puzzle or find an item to advance through the game and the NPC that has that information doesn't want to tell you. In a surprising realistic way, people don't want to just give away their darkest secrets to some random group of kids that asks for them. Go figure. Overall, I really liked field synergy, and I think it's a really cool mechanic. Though I do wish there were more fun applications of the powers to use on the NPCs, like when you use Mind Read. Things that could actually get a reaction out of them. When it comes to the characters and story of Golden Sun, it's a straightforward adventure story with Isaac and friends going from town to town to pursue the bad guys, with each town and group of people that they meet having some sort of crisis that needs to be solved so that the group can advance in their own goals. I think it's interesting that Isaac's group are definitely heroes, but it's also kind of funny how when you really break it down, they're really just heroes of circumstance. Sure, they don't mind helping people out, and they show a general dislike and disdain for the type of people that are assholes and take advantage of the innocent, but there aren't a lot of situations in Golden Sun where there isn't some sort of ulterior motive for the party in addition to helping these people out. Hey everybody, we saved the people of Kalama from being turned into trees because that guy operating the bridge to the next landmass was a tree and we needed him human so we could get across. But hey, what about when we saved that town from being flooded by those evil water statues? And actually we did that because we needed to get through the mines and beating the statues was the only way to do that. You get the point. And yes, there are a few points in the story where helping someone is optional, like busting Ivan's foster father out of a thief town, but there are so few of those moments that I can literally count them on one hand. Look, I'm not saying I have a problem with this type of story structure. In fact, I actually really enjoy it. The whole thing feels like an adventure, going from one town to the next and solving individual crises that pop up, and you effectively becoming some sort of wandering folk heroes of legend of the townspeople as you then go on your merry way, never to return. It's an enticing tale to me. I just think it's hilarious how after solving a town's problem, the group will sometimes come before the town's mayor or whatever and be all like, oh well, we just couldn't possibly leave these people to suffer. That's a load of bull hockey and you know it, guys. If that bridge had been down, you would have been on to the next continent faster than you could say Fern Gully. I always liked Golden Sun's story, even if the presentation was kind of basic. I also really love the characters too. They're some of my favorites. Characters like Garrett, who's brash and, you know, fiery, but underneath all that he's, okay, well, I mean, there's more to his character, but then there's characters like Ivan, who's like kind of crafty, and he's got these cool mind-reading powers, but also he's, I'll be the first to say that Golden Sun's one of my favorite RPGs from childhood. It's a game that I've beaten a dozen times, and while it certainly earned its place in the video game Hall of Fame within my heart, I gotta say that the characters in this game leave a lot to be desired. While none of the main characters are particularly unlikable, there isn't really much to them beyond their mutual goals of saving the world, stopping bad guys, and helping innocent people. When it benefits them anyway. Typically, the main draw of RPGs isn't just the story or the scope of the game, but also the characters that make up the story and their individual characteristics, quirks, flaws, and personal development that makes us care about them as people. Stories that do this sort of thing well have their characters go through what is called a character arc, where they often get character development. Basically, while the character in question will be helping out the protagonist achieve their ultimate goal, they'll also have some sort of personal motives for coming along, something that will come to fruition over the course of the story, and by the end they'll have changed as a person, for better or for worse. They'll probably also talk to you about it along the way. This isn't the only way to write a character or a story, but it's a fairly common one. The problem is that Golden Sun doesn't really do any of that or anything else when it comes to their characters. Each character has a few generic tropes associated with them, but then for the rest of the game, there aren't a lot of situations of us getting to see what they're like as a person or what their more personal motivations are. Garrett is a hothead but a decent person that cares about his friends and family, but that's pretty much all he is for the entire game, and he never has those values challenged. He never shows signs of emotional maturity, save for one optional scene when you visit his family halfway through the game, but then he's right back to his old self once you leave, and it's never really brought up again. Mia is a sweet girl that acts as a healer and joins Isaac to stop a traitor to a clan from helping end the world, but then she never really talks about it more than that, nor go into her backstory with said traitor. She never has something like a crisis of faith with her teachings, or really wonders why her clan member turned traitor to begin with, or if she's doing the right thing. Isaac is a silent protagonist. Enough said. In fact, the only character that does get any sort of character arc is Ivan, the mind-reading Windadap who joins you in the first town after you leave home at the beginning of the game. You find out that people treat Ivan differently because he's a weird kid with weird powers, something you can kind of see when you first meet him, and he just straight up reads your mind without asking for permission. I can think of at least one bald professor in a wheelchair that would be upset with how you abuse those powers, Ivan. And after that, you can actually find out a lot more about Ivan by visiting the town where his adopted parents live and saving his adopted father from a group of bandits. You learn how Ivan is part of this bigger prophecy in regards to saving the world, and that's why he needs to continue to travel with Isaac. There's also a part where you go to a temple and Ivan learns a unique power from a woman who's the same sort of adept as him. Out of all your party members, Ivan got more focus than anybody. Unfortunately, he's still pretty underdeveloped despite all that happens. Ivan never sits down and talks to Isaac about how he feels about this whole prophecy thing, or expresses how he feels about how people treat him due to his mind-reading powers. He just kind of happily follows along with Isaac because he helped them out and that they're friends, that they're gonna save the world. Ivan might get more exposure than the other characters, but ultimately he's got a lot of wasted potential just like everybody else. Just to go off track here for a minute, I think it's pretty funny that Golden Sun has really underdeveloped main characters, yet back in the day, it had a massive fanfiction community when it came to shipping. If you're new to the internet, first let me tell you to never turn Safe Search off. But otherwise, if you don't know what shipping is, it's when fans link two characters together romantically, regardless of whether they are canonically attracted to each other or even bear the same sexual orientation. In the case of Golden Sun, shipping was a huge part of the fandom, and looking back on it, I cannot really figure out why. There really wasn't any teasing or romance or romantic intent in either Golden Sun or its sequel, yet the shipping community found any sort of shared line that the two characters had together to be a sign they're secretly off-screen bumping uglies every time I summon Judgment. No joke, there is pretty much a pairing for every single named character in the series. Here's just a few examples. Mud shipping, which involves Isaac and Mia and is named because of them being an earth and water adept, hence making mud. This is a popular one, even though it's really got no basis. I think it kind of just gained popularity because Isaac is the main character of the first game and Mia is the only girl in your party in that one. Another popular one is Vale shipping, which is between Isaac and Jenna. It's named after the two of them being from the village of Vale. This was the only ship that actually had any kind of concrete evidence for it's based on a scene in the second game. And it actually turned out to be canon by the third game in the series, so there you go. But then there's ships like Caragol shipping, which is the shipping between a monster called the Kraken and the literal ship that it attacks. I'm serious, this is a ship about a monster sexing a boat. And obviously I'm exaggerating the seriousness of some of these ships. After all, most of them were just made for fun. I doubt most actually have a fic written about them. But you gotta admit, when you see the list of all the unique shipping names that were made for this series, it's a bit impressive for the fanbase to resolve. I'll post a link to the compiled ship names in the description, so have fun with that. Getting back on track, there were a few other issues with the Golden Sun that I noticed after revisiting it after all this time. Things that can partly be attested to the time when the game was made, but were still pretty annoying. The gameplay itself is nothing to write home about. As I said, it follows a lot of classic RPG gameplay tropes, but that kind of makes it hard to go back to after playing more modern takes on the genre now that have done it better. For starters, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it, I absolutely loathe random encounter battles. Specifically random battles where you just suddenly run into some invisible monster that was lurking in front of you and then being thrust into a fight that lasts about 30 seconds, only to run 5 more steps forward after that and then find yourself fighting another one. It's a system that's been done to hell a back, but significantly less nowadays, and after playing Golden Sun again, I can see why. Random battles are just so tedious and time consuming. Not being able to predict when you get sucked into a fight gets annoying very quickly and breaks the flow of getting through a dungeon or area painlessly. In another game, I could decide if I wanted to fight a monster or not and plan around it. Maybe I wanted to save resources, maybe I wasn't strong enough, or maybe I was just impatient and the fight wasn't worth my time. The only way to reduce the chance of it happening in Golden Sun is to use a special item for it, but that doesn't make the problem go away completely. Random battles suck, and I hate them. Speaking of battles, I gotta say, while the fights aren't certainly flashy and entertaining with all the different spells and effects they can use, I found myself not even using Synergy half the time towards the end of the game. Typically I just use a Jin or my regular attack and then reset the Jin after the battle before moving on. Synergy is cool, but the spells just didn't seem all that useful aside from the healing ones. I almost never used them in boss battles, just instead going the route of using Jin, summons, and my normal attacks, and then having Mia heal the group if things got dicey. Even the customizable class system that I mentioned earlier didn't really seem worth it in the long run. Most playthroughs I would just stick to having everyone use the most common Jin type because you still get great stats and spells from those classes. Sure, you could make the argument that the ninja and samurai classes are better, but when I'm getting by perfectly fine with the base classes that the characters have, what's even the point? Finally, and like I said, this last one might just be a sign of the time, so I can't criticize it too harshly, the visuals in Golden Sun are ranging from beautiful to really ugly. The characters in Golden Sun are all sprites, and the ones for our heroes don't look too bad most of the time, but enemy sprites are all over the place. The ones that are a normal humanoid size tend to look alright, but then the game resizes and stretches various enemy sprites out to the point where they look horrendous. They're so bloated and pixelated that it looks like I'm fighting that sort of blur effect that you see on a show when they try to protect someone's identity.
Is there a light switch in here? Oh, it's behind here, is that it?
Come on out, Joshua.
Oh,
Right over there, please.
Golden Sun is one of my favorite RPGs. Hell, I would consider it to be one of my favorite games. But, you know, it's not perfect. Some of the criticisms leveled towards it could just be a sign of when the game was made, but those are still criticisms. But damn it, I don't care! I love Golden Sun! This is my favorite game, man! I freaking love the characters, the combat, and everything about it! I love playing it again, even if it did have issues. Maybe it's not the best RPG ever made. Maybe the characters are flat. Maybe the visuals are cluttered and ugly. But god damn if I don't love Golden Sun to death. I love the fun story. I love the characters, however flat they are. I love the sense of adventure I get from going from town to town, saving the day as I close in on those bastards that stole my childhood friend slash love interest. And also Kraden. The combat might be turn-based and the random encounter system might be infuriating, but cheese and crackers if I wasn't excited for every single battle. Monsters that die make this death cry and dissolve into nothingness. Some of your spells include summoning a big-ass sword that impales the opponent and explodes. Battles were so flashy and exciting, and even the text at the bottom was all like, "Hot damn, Isaac, you hit that asshole for like 1,000,000 damage." Oh, and the sounds! Golden Sun has one of the most nostalgic soundtracks for me, where how amazing and epic the music is. Every clip, every tick, every boop hits a chord with me in this game. What's especially amazing is just how great the music is on a handheld like the Game Boy Advance. Seriously, nobody knew this sort of music would come for something like the GBA before Golden Sun knocked them on their ass. I love Golden Sun. I'm always gonna love Golden Sun, and I'm not gonna sell it to you like it's some perfect RPG because it's not. But I've played it a dozen times, and I'm probably gonna play it a dozen more times before I die because I just enjoy it that much. There's a breath of simplicity to it, something that's just enjoyable to me about it. If you want to try it out for yourself, you can check it out on the Wii U eShop now for cheap. If you do pick it up, you might also want to check out Golden Sun The Lost Age, which is a sequel and a direct continuation of this game's story. Which I'm not going to talk about today because that's going to be its whole other thing if I ever decide to cover it. Regardless, hope you enjoyed this video. See you later.
The boulder's over his conflicted feelings, and now he's ready to bury you in a rock-a-lanche.